What are some of the financial impacts you see in your practice for that spouse who just recently come through a separation and they're struggling with their debts? And what do you see, Leah?
Well, David, if we look at it from the perspective of an individual who is the one who's now going to be paying support, whether that be child support or spousal support, they now have an increase in their cost of living when you add the support costs to their monthly expenses. And now we have probably lower incomes coming into the household. You now have one individual rather than two bringing income into the household, and yet they're experiencing either an increase in costs due to additional rent, living costs, perhaps having to make purchases of furniture if they've just moved out, in addition to the child and spousal support that they may be paying. So we tend to see those spouses sometimes even take on more debt in order to fund those additional costs. So that debt burden is increasing with the increased cost of living, and it can very quickly spiral out of control. Another thing that we see is if you're the receiving spousal support spouse, let's say you've separated recently and you're the lower income spouse, you're now relying on your ex to help you with your household bills by paying child or spousal support to you. So you're trying to budget and manage your household costs on what could perhaps be an uncertain income. As we just talked about, the person paying support may be struggling, so they may not always be up to date making their payments to the person receiving support. So there's a potential for that person relying on that support income. Maybe they're unable to make some of their debt payments because they're trying to feed their family rather than pay off their credit cards. So again, these marital separation situations quite often cause spiraling debt on top of all the other stresses that these individuals are experiencing.
Oh, thanks, Leah. And Pam, what do you see these days?
Yeah, I would agree with Leah's comments, whether you're on the receiving side of support order or you're responsible for paying, irregular irregular income really can just spiral, and it happens so quickly. So the last thing you need to do is worry about, your creditor obtaining whatever requirements in the province you're in, notice of a garnishee, and now, well, you couldn't make it before. If a garnishee of wages happens, well, the situation just got a lot worse. We do recommend chatting with us long before if you receive a notice of legal action, but making sure you talk to us to ensure that that income continues to flow, even if it's not able to service all the debt. Come talk to us as soon as you can so we can help with those situations so it doesn't get worse. We definitely don't want to see individuals struggling any more than they have to when you're going through a divorce, but more importantly, there's a financial burden through that divorce. So if there's anything we can do to help individuals get through this process, we want to make sure they're aware of all their options and that we can protect them as best we can when it does come to a garnishee, to ensure that either they can make the payment and or if their spousal support or child support isn't coming in regularly, making sure they have their monthly income to pay their rent and their power and their groceries. So, it's so stressful and it's so hard sometimes to ask for help, but it's really important to make sure you're talking to the right people at the right time to ensure we can make this situation as best we can.